Hello, my name is Nicholas Honecker. When I was growing up, I lived with my grandparents while my mother was away for the army. I learned from my grandparents that when they were growing up, the adults didn't share that much information. My mother and I decided to do this documentary in order to document their lives, so that way their stories are not lost, and so that way generations are able to look back and see all that they have done. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed learning more about my grandparents.
Please state your name and date of birth.
My name is Ollie J. Berry, and I was born December the 11th, 1933.
What are your earliest memories?
My earliest memories is when I was about 4 years old. Um, at the time, my sister was born, although I did not know what that at the time. This cousin came to take care of Mama, and I used to go in Mama's sugar bowls and go in her. We had we had cows and we had cream, milk and cream, and I used to stick my fingers in the cream, and she caught me doing it, and she spanked me, and I didn't think that she was supposed to spank me because my brothers and sisters was always, you know, they spoiled me. I have to say that, and whenever she got ready to leave that afternoon, I walked out in the road. I waited till she got about far as from here to Mr. Uh, across the street there where that car is. And I told her she was mean. I said, "You mean thing, you." But Mama did nothing about it. She never said anything about it until after I got grown. I used to follow my brothers a lot. I was born between two brothers, and so most of the time that's who I played with, and I would follow my brothers, especially my big brother, my brother Louis, and he used to go out in the field pick cotton, and I'd go out and sit down on his cotton sack, and he would pull that sack with me on it until it started getting too heavy, and he said, "You got to get up now." He'd tell me, and sometimes I would walk along with him and talk, and sometimes I would go back to the house. And when I was about 5 years old, my mama told me to get some wood to start a fire so she could cook dinner. And I went out to the wood pile and got this hatchet and was cutting the wood and split my leg open. I was supposed to start school that fall, and I couldn't go to school. I was a year late going to school because of that. Mama took care of it, and later on, it got infected. And she had to carry me to the doctor, and that was the first time I ever went to a doctor. And so it was. I was almost 7 years old before I started school,
Hmm.
and but whenever we would be going to school, my brother Louis Jr., Clifford, Dolores, and Randall. That's who all was walking. We had to walk 5 miles to school. And so I couldn't keep up. And because my brothers, they were big men. They were, they were bigger than you. And so they be walking and they tell me, come on, Ollie, come on, Ollie. I said, I'm coming. I couldn't keep up. I was just running the whole time. And so he would take me and pick me up and put me on his shoulders, straddling my feet hanging down. And that's the way I went to school every day, on his shoulder. And whenever I remember Pearl Harbor, because when it happened, it was about 4 days before my birthday. And also that year, January, this was in December. But in January, Mom and Dad was building a house when I was in the town. And so in January, we moved into the new house. And so I didn't have to walk as far to school after that. But I walked about a half a mile to school. And at the same time, just before we moved, Lewis quit school. And he went to work. He helped build that road, the Highway 23 coming through Collins. He helped build that. But after we moved, he was called into the service because he was 18 years old, and he came to here to Fort Eustis. That's where he took his training at. When I was 13, my dad left home. He would come and stay with us if Mom had to go somewhere, but other than that, um, he didn't stay home. And when Lewis come back from the army, he went and joined Daddy in Savannah and went to work to the paper mill.
Well, let me ask you real quick. You said you do remember Pearl Harbor. How old were you?
I was 7 years old, and 4 days before my 8th birthday, that's when Pearl Harbor happened. You see, it happened on the 7th, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 4 days before my 8th birthday. I was 8 years old when we moved into the new house.
All right. Do you remember like any stories about your grandparents, or do you remember your grandparents at all?
I only slightly remember one of my grandparents, my grandmother. I think I was about 4 or 5 years old whenever she died. I remember her coming, that we would go and stay with her. Sometimes Mom would go to film, things like that. And we would stay at her house. But my grandfather, her husband, he died 2 weeks before I was born. And Mama's parents died when she was a child. When Mama was 5 or 7 years old, I think her mother and father died. So I didn't know any of my grandparents. Not really.
You were about to say something?
No, I knew a lot of grandmamas, uncles, brothers, and sisters, and I slightly remember my great grandmother on my daddy's side. I slightly remember her because my great grandmother was the mother of my grandmother, and I slightly remember her. She was a slave, and she used to carry a gun, and she lived right there in town. She did. She my uh, grandmother, and then when my grandmother got married to my grandfather, she lived on a farm.
Now I remember you were saying something about when you were 13. Do you remember more about your teenage years? You have other things to share?
Um, Not a whole lot about my teenage years. I remember when I was 9, I started singing, and then when I was 13, I took piano lessons. I started playing the piano, and I would travel to Savannah. I was a little older then, but when I first started playing the piano, Mom and them would take me to Claxton. Um, She was also my first grade teacher. The lady that was teaching me piano lessons, she was also my first grade teacher. And so she used to come up to Collins to teach school. Saturdays I would go to Claxton to her house to get my piano lessons. And I also was the only one that had piano lessons. And like I said, when I was growing up, I was sort of special. My brothers and sisters treated me like I was a baby instead of my sister Barbara. And then whenever I stopped going to Claxton to take piano lessons, I used to go on the train by myself to Savannah to get my piano lessons. And Mama's cousin, uh, he was a doctor, and his wife was a piano teacher, and she used to teach me. She taught me for free, and I would catch the train on Friday evening and go to Savannah to get my piano lesson. I would stay with my sister Jean and my daddy in Savannah overnight, and then I would go back home Saturday evening.
All right. What about what about your college years? What do you remember about that?
Um, I was late finished. I told you I was late starting school.
Mm-hmm.
So that made me late finishing high school. I was 19 before I finished high school. But when I was when I was in 7th grade, I think it was, that's when I met your granddaddy. I had seen him, but I hadn't met him. And his sister, the one who told me about him, and he had told his sister, he said he saw me at church. And he told his sister, he said, I'm going to marry that girl. And his sister told me about it. And I said, marry me. I said, I'm not thinking about getting married. And so I just brushed it off. But in high school, uh, Vera, his granddaddy's sister, She and I went through high school together, and we graduated from high school together. She was valedictorian, and then uh, I went to college that fall, and
So what year was this?
this was in '53. I went to Augusta to Payne College, and your grandfather came home for Christmas, and he asked me to marry him, and I told him I wasn't ready to get married. But when Mama and my brother carried me back to school, he went with them to take me back to school. And then whenever he was on his way to Indianapolis, he came by to see me at college. And we weren't allowed to have, I was at a private college, and we weren't allowed to have any boyfriends uh, on campus, off campus. We used to go to the movies and stuff like that. But at the end of that year, I switched and went to Savannah State College. I worked during the summer, and then in the fall, I went to Savannah State College. And in the spring, I became ill, and I couldn't finish out the year. I didn't have very long to go, but I couldn't finish out the year because I got ill. And I went home and went to the doctor and told me I was having liver problems. But I worked during that summer, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I decided later on, before school started, I said, I'm not going back to school. But during that summer, your granddaddy came home from overseas, and we dated. And I also uh, had a friend that lived in Marietta, Georgia, and he had asked me to marry him. And I would not give him no answer. And Aunt Corrine came home, and I was telling her about it. And she told me, she said, which one do you know the best? Because Dennis was a big drinker from Marietta. He was a big drinker. He was a senior, and I was a sophomore at the time. And so, anyway, Wilton left and um, I think not New York, next to New York. What's the name of it? The state?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. He went to New Jersey, and he was stationed there, and we wrote to each other every day with each other. And so I was telling him, he had asked me to marry him again. That was the second time he had asked me to marry him. And I told him, I said that I'm not ready to get married. And so when I talked to my sister, and she was talking something like, she said, uh, you don't know Dennis that well, and you do know Wilson, she said. So I wrote him and told him, I said, if you still want to get married, I said, we'll get married. I said, but you got to ask Mama first. I told him he had to ask my mama. He wrote Mama a letter and said he told her he wanted to marry her daughter. And she wrote him back, told him yeah. And so whenever I told Mama about it, us getting married, I said it'd probably have to be around Christmas time. So she said I had three daughters to get married. That was my three sisters older than me. Three daughters to get married, and none of them had a church wedding. So I had a church wedding. And whenever my brothers and sisters found out, well, when I was in college, I forgot to tell you, when I was in college, my brothers and sisters went all out. And they carried me shopping. And one of them carried me to New York. Um, one of them carried me to, my sister carried me to Chicago. And whenever they found out I was getting married, they all pitched in and helped Mama um, to let me get married. And at the same time, I took a substitute teaching job to earn money. And I paid for my gown. But my sisters and brothers did a lot more. They helped Mom fix up the house. And then my oldest sister, Imogene, she got this guy to bake the cake. And you know, even then, cakes were expensive. To bake the cake, and my brother, he bought the refreshments, and well, they just helped do everything. Mama didn't have to do a whole lot. And I was the only one out of the 10 kids. I was the only one that had a church wedding. And then whenever we got married, your granddaddy and I uh, left. We were supposed to get married on the 27th of December. And whenever he came home for Christmas, he told me, he said, I got to be back on post. I report in on the 27th. So we went on and we had sent out the invitations for 27. I go to church, announce it in church. Yeah, we will be getting married on Christmas Day. So we got married on Christmas Day, and we left on the 26th, going to Jersey. And he had already gotten a place for us to stay and everything. And we stayed in Jersey um, from January till March. And then they sent him to Fort Eustis. So he carried me home, and I stayed with your great grandmom and great granddaddy, and for 5 weeks. And he sent for me to come up here, and we've been here ever since.
So, quite a lot. Well, let me ask you kind of a general question. What do you remember about the entirety of like the civil rights movement?
Oh, civil rights movement. That started happening after we got here.
Mm-hmm.
But as a child, we had some challenges too. Um, We weren't allowed to go into, if we went into a drugstore where they were serving drinks or food, if we went in there, we could not go into the back of the drugstore where the where the white people were eating or served drink. If we wanted something, we had to go to the back door.
Mm-hmm.
But I never did that. And well, some white people treated you just like they were, because I know that the man we were working for, they treated us. He treated we sit down in the kitchen, and they sit down in the kitchen too and ate with us.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever we came up here, things weren't that bad because that summer after we got here, I rode the bus home, and I sit on the front seat in the bus. And the next time I rode the bus, my brother brought me back up here. But the next time I went home on the bus, I had to sit in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time I was coming back up here on the bus. I was sitting in the back, and then the white people get on the bus, and they can't find no seat. You got to get up and stand up. And I remember we went to a meeting. That was the first time I saw Martin Luther King. We went to a meeting at church where they was talking about, civil rights. And also, whenever we came here and we registered to vote, we had to pay poll tax.
And what year was this?
Let me see. We came up here. We came up here in '56. So we registered to vote. We registered to vote. Must have been '56, '57. But we registered to vote, and we had to pay poll tax up in Warwick. Newport News. It was Warwick then, because we were living in Warwick at the time. 'Cause we had moved into. It must have been '57. We had moved into a apartment by '57. That's uh, February of '57. And in '57, we had our first child.
What were you saying?
She didn't live. In '58, Denise was born.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you. You said you heard about Martin Luther King, or you met him?
I met not Martin Luther King. He came to this big church down there on Jefferson Avenue, and at the time I was pregnant with Denise, and I met him uh, at the church, but I was just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And but he was talking about civil rights, everything. Yeah,
Okay, let me ask you. So you said you had to pay poll taxes,
yeah.
but other than that, that was the only thing you had to do.
If we didn't pay the poll tax, we couldn't vote. But see, white people wasn't paying poll tax. Just black people was paying poll tax.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Well, let me ask you. In Georgia, did did your mother did she ever vote?
oh yeah, they weren't paying poll tax then. I voted in Georgia too. I voted for the first time in '52 because I turned. It was just before I turned 18. Uh, it was the year that what's his name? He was a general.
Was that
Eisenhower.
Eisenhower? Yeah.
When Eisenhower became president, I voted for the first time.
So the whole grandfather clause thing that didn't affect you or anything.
The grandfather what?
The grandfather clause,
What you mean?
as in, if grandfather was a slave, you couldn't vote.
No,
Didn't.
that wasn't it. It was just that black people couldn't vote unless here
Hmm.
unless they paid poll tax.
But where you were in Georgia, there was no difficulty.
I didn't have no problem voting because I went home. Um, when I went home, when Wilson carried me home, and I stayed out there 5 weeks,
Hmm.
I voted while I was there and renewed my license and everything. I had a Georgia license, and I voted while I was down there. And then when I came up here, Wilson and I registered to vote. You had to register to vote. We had to pay poll tax.
Okay, then. All right. All right. Well, hmm. So throughout all the way up until like 65, 64, nothing.
Well,
It was just the poll tax here. That's it.
they had restrained you from riding on the front of the bus.
Hmm.
When you went over town to the bus station, you could not sit in certain places. Before you could. When I first come here, you could sit anywhere.
Hmm.
But later on, it got so that you could not sit anywhere you wanted to sit at the bus station. And but then whenever I tell you whenever they started it, started transition, it was it was in you see I was driving school bus by this time,
Hmm.
and because um we were taking just the black kids to school.
What year was this?
I started driving. I started driving in 70. Yeah, 1970.
Hmm.
And then in about 73, things was changing.
It took until the 70s.
Yeah, for things to change. Um, I was driving just black kids to black schools. And then whenever they changed, um, I had to pick up black kids and take them at the high school and take them over town. They had a high school over town on I'm trying to think of the name of the street. I can't think of I can't think of the name of the street right now. But they turned it into a thing for the Navy uh, over there. But to tell you the truth, when we started driving black and white, I used to go over town and pick up elementary kids, black and white.
Hmm.
I picked up black on one side of town and then went all the way downtown uh, and had to pick up kids and bring them to Marshall Avenue uh, and Madison. Anyway, they, to tell you the truth, when they changed it over, the black kids were worse than the white kids. You wouldn't believe it, but they would treat us like we were supposed to treat them like they were white.
Mm.
But the black kids the white kids were good. it was the black kids that was a problem. But most of the time I drove though, uh, I drove white kids and I drove black kids. I had to pick up all the way up on 17 and bring kids down to Newsom Park. Uh, they were middle school, and I had to pick up kids from Newmarket all the way down to 16th Street and take them over downtown to Newport High School.
Mhm.
And then I had to pick up kids, middle school kids, and carry them elementary school kids. They were all black, and take them to up all the way up to almost not 17. That's between 17 and Jefferson Avenue. The school was.
Okay, let me stop you right there. Let's pause it. Pause it. All right. So, do you remember when JFK died?
Yes, yes, I remember it well. I was we had moved here, and I was in this room back here. I was putting shellac on the floor. See, what year did you die? Oh, we had hardwood floors, and I was putting wax on the floor.
Oh, I see. I see. I see.
and
All right.
and so
Well, JFK died in what was it? 63. Yeah, 63.
63. Yeah, okay. Well, we had just moved. We moved out here in 62,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was round there in the room, and I had the radio on. I might have had the TV on. I'm not sure. And it said that the JFK had gotten shot. And I remember that Saturday and Sunday. I remember I looked at it whenever they brought him back to Washington, and I was I also looked at the parade where he was when he was shot, and then I looked at whenever they brought him back to Washington. And they had well, I looked at it whenever they had his funeral, and I looked at it whenever the guy that got shot that shot the guy that shot uh JFK. Yeah.
While we're on top about JFK, what do you remember about the Cuban Missile Crisis?
Uh, not a whole lot. Not a whole lot, but I remember it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it, and because I was afraid that they was gonna start another war, and so close to United States too. And I remember how JFK uh, held them off, and you know, and what had to be done. He did what had to be done, but I don't remember a whole lot about it.
Okay, all right.
But I do remember it.
What about when Robert Kennedy died? Remember
I
that?
remember that too. Yeah, I remember when Robert Kennedy died, and I remember whenever King died. I remember all three of them. I remember Robert Kennedy going to King's funeral, and I remember Robert Kennedy supporting um, Jackie whenever um, whenever Kennedy died. and watch the film on TV.
All right. What do you remember about the Vietnam War?
Uh, I remember things about the Vietnam War too, because my brother Randall was in it. He he did 2 tours in the Vietnam War, and I was afraid that my brother Lewis, he did have to go back in the service. He was in the reserves, and he had to go back in the service. And but they did not send him to Vietnam. They sent him to France, because that's where he went. He went to France both times. Whenever he in World War II, he went to France. And I remember Mama saying, "Thank God that he didn't have to fight." But it still did him harm, because he used to have nightmares real bad. And Vietnam really did ramble him. My brother Randall, he he couldn't hardly live with himself, because of having to fight in Vietnam, and things were so terrible over there. That's about all I remember about Vietnam, and I just know it was awful.
All right. What do you remember about Watergate?
Yeah, that's whenever Nixon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a big stink too. Um, and they was going to put Nixon out of office, but before they could carry it out, he resigned. And I don't know, things like that. You a lot of times you don't pay a whole lot of closeness with it. You just hope and pray that things will turn out right. Because in much you can do, you remember looking at it on TV and all that stuff, and you whenever they first started talking about it, you couldn't hardly believe that it was happening.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So, you remember 9/11, but how did it feel to hear about it, like the first time to see it?
Wow, devastating, really. Um, I remember that your mom brought you over here. I was keeping you during the day. Um, she would bring you over here, and I think you brought him over, or did Chuck bring him over? But anyway, and your mom said something about it, but I had already seen it on TV. And I had the TV on, and it was it make you kind of want to cry to know that all those people had gotten killed in that plane crash, and how and we tried to call New York to see how I could see what was happening to Yvonne, because she was living there then, and we couldn't get in touch with her, and so I think we called some of the other part of the family too, but it was very devastating to see what happened.
Right. Well, let me ask you, how does it feel to be 86 years old?
Well, I never thought about it um, a lot. When I became 80, I thought, well, I I was still healthy. I still doing pretty good. Then when I became 80, 84, 83, I said, well, things started getting, you know, kind of complicated getting around. And then when I got 85, 84, they, that was that was in 18 in 19. That was 17. 17. Because that's why one of the reasons I had to stop teaching Sunday school and singing in the choir because I was having problems standing. And uh, then in 18, things started to get worse. And but I still say, and I still do say, thank God you let me stay here these 86 years because I never thought that I would be older than my mom was when she died. And so far, I've gotten to be older than three of my, I mean, but all of them except three, Lars Jr. and Clifford, they were older than I am. Clifford was 88 and Junior was almost 92.
Hmm.
And your Aunt Dolores, she's 92 already. So, and I just say, like I said, thank God you let me. One of the things I wanted to see was see you graduate from high school. And I'm hoping that I'll see you get out of college. And I just say thank you, Lord, every day that you let me see another day. And whenever the end of that year comes, and if I get to be another year old, I'll just say thank you, Lord. And I just feel like I'm blessed.
How did it feel to see the first African American president?
Oh, wonderful. Uh, that was uh, he. At first, I didn't think he would make it, but um, I remember going to get my nails done, and how they was talking about it in the shop, and they told people went and voted that had never voted. Some of them had never voted before,
Mm-hmm.
and because they wanted to get Obama into office, and they did it, and I thought it was great. I thought it was great, and but I know that a lot of white people didn't want him to be there and still talk about things that he done that they wouldn't have done. I think it's great. I think it was great.
All right, well, do you have any last thing you want to say?
Uh, I can't think of anything. Like I said, I'm just thankful to still be able to have my right mind and be able to still get around as much as I can. And like I said, I'm just glad to see you graduate last year and watch you grow up. And I just hope that I can see you graduate from college. If I don't, I'll still be thankful for everything. I've had a good life, and I can't complain about it. Like I said, I grew up with 9 brothers and sisters, and they treated me like I was a baby. I was their baby. And I I talk about it and I think about it a lot. That how they treated me whenever we were, your granddaddy and I were getting ready to get married. My brother Clifford told Mama had a dinner for us. Uh, he told Wilton, he said, "You're not getting much." Said he said she's spoiled. So Mama told him, says, "Yeah, she's spoiled, but I didn't do it." She said, "Y'all did it. Y'all spoiled her." And whenever we got married, I thought that your granddaddy should treat me like my brother did. Until I went that way until Denise was about 2 years old, and the doctor told me, he said, "You have a terrible temper." I did. I did. Like I said, I thought that I should be treated just like my brothers and sisters treated me. He said, "You have a terrible temper. You got to learn how to control your temper." And I did. I did. I learned to control my temper because I hit him in the eye one time, and it swelled up because of my temper. And I got better. I got better because, like I said, all the time, and whenever I wrote him that letter, Christmas year and a half ago, I told him that there've been some ups and there've been some downs, but we have worked through it. But nowadays, he's letting his condition control him a little bit. And so I pray every day and ask God to help me to have patience with him because I know that he doesn't want to be that way, and he just get disgusted with himself. Things he used to do, he can't do anymore. And I keep telling him, I says, "You're not a baby anymore. You're 90 years old, and just things you can't do." And he hasn't accepted it yet. And so I ask God to help me to be patient.
Right.
It's not easy.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Mhm. Mhm.